Welcome to Dead Man Talking. Tonight's story is by the incredible mind of REEzilla2005 over on Reddit No Sleep. As ever, please do let me know what you thought down below in the comments box. Please do like and share. It really does help with the channel and our community further. And why not hashtag TeamFEAR and DMT's Cryptid crew. And so, with that aside, let's get into tonight's story. Entitled, I went into the woods on a search and rescue mission, and what I encountered was not human. Part 1. Let's get straight into that. This happened last year when I was on a search and rescue mission. It was for a family who went missing 2 weeks ago. Receiving a ping from the GPS tracking beacon, I gathered my team together to get ready to head out. Hey Kobe, got a light? Carlton asked, cigarette hanging loosely from his mouth. Carlton and I always got along well since we were children. Sure, I got one, I said as I handed him a matchstick. What's the matter with your lighter? He asked, taking a puff out of his cigarette. Does it really matter? I replied to him. No, but I assume someone like you would have a lighter, not carry around matchsticks all the time. Okay, I said before we dove into another conversation. Get everything ready to go so we can leave. He packed everything essential such as a map, a compass, extra food and water, extra clothes, flashlights, a first aid kit. And we were ready to go. We got into our trucks and headed out for the woods from our base. As we headed into the woods, the clouds started getting darker and darker. It looks like rain clouds, Carlton said, looking out the window with a blank expression. Yeah, only the more reason to find that family fast, I responded. Carlton always had a hard time on these missions. I could tell. We got onto the main hiking trail, which would take us to where the beacon went off. We started walking with the rest of the group, which consisted of me, a 37-year-old man who looks older than who he is and seen way too much. Carlton, a 34-year-old with bright red hair and a sense of humor none of us have. Amy, a blonde-haired 28-year-old with big blue eyes and black glasses. And Chris, a 47-year-old with dark grey hair and an attitude you would not want to fuck with. Charlotte, an 18-year-old with long brown hair and big brown eyes. And Russell, a 58-year-old retired police officer who looked like he was 70. And Corey, a 26-year-old with black hair shaved close to his head. Jack, a 42-year-old. He was incredibly traumatized by something from his past involving a hunting trip. And finally, Zachary, an incredibly brave 39-year-old with a shaved head and lots of upper muscle. We hiked along the trail, hoping the family would be alive. Hey Kobe, Carlton said. Do you have the feeling that something's wrong here? Carlton asked. Yeah, I feel it too, Charlotte added. The rest of us didn't feel a thing. They were known to be paranoid on these missions, so we just continued on. Nightfall came quick and the rain slowly started to fall. We never really saw any signs of disaster, but as we reached the area, we were all horrified. The site was destroyed, with scratch marks covering the trees all around it. The tents were torn through and all the items, well, they were scattered. Jack walked up to my side. What in the living hell happened here? He whispered to himself. The rain was heavily pouring now, so we put on our raincoats from our backpacks. That's when we heard a loud snapping noise behind us. We heard Carlton let out small whimpers as we all turned to see what he was looking at. We all froze instantly. We saw it in the trees, just staring at us. It was a tall, pale brown creature, with fur running down its back. It had what looked like tight skin stretched over a deer skull, with dark hollow sockets and with glowing yellow eyes. It had 2 stubs where antlers would have once been, 2 very long arms stretching down to its calves, and with long fingers reaching down to its bare, like feet. Its body was almost skeletal. It stood at least 10 feet tall. We all froze, and slowly we started to back away as the thing, it started to approach us. I went into the woods on a search and rescue mission, and what I found was not human. Part 2. Let's get straight into that. The creature stood there, watching us with its beady eyes. I had kept its distance until Carlton walked forward. "Carlton, get your ass back," Russell yelled. The creature reacted to Russell's words, charging in too quickly to realize shoved its fingers through his chest. He gasped in pain, and Corey, he took off running. We were all frozen in terror. It looked at us and chuckled quietly. It removed its fingers from Russell's chest and he dropped to the ground, completely motionless. It was obvious. Russell, he was dead. I felt a fit of rage and pulled out my revolver I always had on me. I shot the entire round of bullets into that creature's face. The creature tumbled backwards, and we all turned and ran. I heard fast footsteps behind and then felt a surge of pain in my back. It slashed downwards onto my back, and I couldn't move my legs. Jack and Zachary grabbed me and picked me up and started running. The creature then attacked Amy. It grabbed her back and snapped her neck. Carlton spotted a cave as the creature swung back and charged at him. We made it to the cave before it could kill any more of us. It followed us into the cave as we retreated into the darkness. Eventually, we came across an area that seemed to be easily collapsible, so we could save us some time. I took out my gun and shot the roof of the cave a few times, and the rocks fell covering our exit. It would buy us some time, for now. We started a fire and were still shaken up from what had happened. I reassured Carlton and the others we would go back for the bodies, if we could. If we could? With that creature out there, it would kill us all if we left now, Jack said. We don't even know if Corey is even alive. He ran off, Charlotte added. We will have to suffocate if we stay here, Zachary complained. Oh, I'm sorry. If you would rather be torn apart, I argued. I have a tracking beacon. I'll set it off when we... There was a loud crash from the collapsed entrance. Rocks tumbled onto the ground. Another crash came and all the rocks that blocked our exit fell to the ground. The creature stood there, keeping us closed in as we all huddled together. The creature stood there with a smile spread across its face. It had something in its hand. It threw it to the ground, only to reveal that it was Corey's head. Charlotte screamed and Carlton bent over on his hands and knees. Corey's head still had his eyes open in terror. I still couldn't move my legs. The creature was standing there, and that's when I saw Zachary ramming into the creature. The creature fell over, and Charlotte and Chris grabbed me as we ran past the creature. They ran so fast with me, I thought it was impossible. When we came to a river, and I saw a passageway underneath the waterfall. One by one we hid there, and it had enough room for us. It was only now that I realized that Zachary was missing. Ah, fuck! What do we do? Chris asked, his voice full of terror. We stay here for now. It should buy us some time to use that beacon to call for backup, Carlton said, failing to keep the anxiety out of his voice. You saw what that fucking thing did to Corey, Russell, Amy, and I hope not Zachary. It would be wise to try and escape the area first to avoid more bloodshed, I said. Carlton sat up and glared at me. Jack put a hand on his shoulder to signify for him to leave it. And Jack turned to face me, who was still paralyzed from the waist down, lying in my own blood. I was incredibly uncomfortable, but the others were able to stop most of the bleeding that would have killed me. Carlton, I think we need to accept the fact that we're all going to die down here. I mean, that thing, it's ruthless and... He was cut off, sounding a little nervous. And what, Jack? And what? Fine. I encountered the thing before, okay? I saw what it did to my father and my granddad. We all stared at Jack with a look of shock, as he explained. I went hunting when I was 10 with my granddad and father. We heard our mother calling to us, but we were too far into the woods for her to be around. Now when my dad went to see, a large creature came out. It was the exact same creature as what we just saw, but it had antlers. Now my dad, he turned and tried to run from it, but it got to him, tearing him apart and began eating his flesh. Me and my granddad, we were in shock. My granddad grabbed his gun and shot it twice in the head, and he blew its antlers off. I then saw him load up a strange bullet and shoot it into the creature's chest. It caused the creature to screech in pain and fall backwards. My granddad told me to run as I heard him shoot the hell out of that thing, and then heard flesh being torn apart. Now eventually I made it back to my house and we called the police. I saw them dragging out of the woods what was left of my granddad and my father. Jack looked around nervously at the group. To understand what we are dealing with, I need to tell you the legend of the Wendigo. I went into the woods on a search and rescue mission. What I found was not human. Part 3. Let's get straight into that. Charlotte was doing her best at changing my bandages so I wouldn't be so uncomfortable. The Wendigo. You mean that myth about the creature that can mimic other voices, along with being an incredibly dangerous hunter? I asked doubtfully. You know, that's not what I expected it to look like. Carlton added. You must be joking, right? Nobody's seen a Wendigo and survived to tell the story, which is why I suggest we give up now. Unless... Jack trailed off. Unless what? I asked. My voice was filled with anxiety. Unless there is something in my granddad's journal. You know, he had a cabin in the area, and he always told me stories about the Wendigo. So maybe he knew more than he was letting on. And how far is it? Carlton asked with a grim expression. Should be a few miles out north from here. I'm going to stay with you, Kobe, and you and Carlton go and find the cabin, Charlotte said. Okay. Kobe, give me the revolver. And Chris, you're coming too, Jack added, clearly not wanting to fuck around. Chris got up without hesitation and headed towards the opening, and I handed Jack the revolver with all of the bullets I had on me. And within a few minutes of packing, the three of them left me and Charlotte. It was about midnight, but we were still wide awake, too afraid to fall asleep. We heard loud footsteps outside, followed by snarling. Charlotte picked me up and hid me in a crevice in a rock and pushed me in so I could hide. She put a finger to her lips and walked away towards the exit of the space. And I had no choice but to watch in horror what happened next. The Wendigo walked through the waterfall into the space, and it was hunched over, and its mouth was agape, revealing 2 rows of teeth. Its tongue was long and forked, like a snake, and I could only now see little stubs that were once antlers on its head. Charlotte rushed out of the corner of the space, screaming and jumping onto its back, shoving a large hunting knife into the creature's neck. The creature screeched in pain as it threw her to the ground, promptly pulling out the knife. And the Wendigo looked at her and snickered as it grabbed her by the throat and lifted her off of the ground. I had to watch my friend die, knowing I couldn't do anything to save her. I sobbed quietly as I saw Charlotte go limp. The creature then promptly tore her in half, and then devoured her. "Kobe!" I heard Jack scream. "In here!" I yelled back, still sobbing. It was daylight now, and they were all back now, looking over the pools of blood on the floor and bits and pieces of flesh that were once Charlotte. Chris bent over the gruesome sight and sobbed loudly. I joined him in sobbing, crying until I could no more. "We need to leave now," Chris said after he was finished sobbing. "The cabin is safe for us to go to. We found Zachary. What was left of him," he said, looking down at his shoes now stained with dried blood. "All right, we can't stay here anymore. That thing might be back any minute to kill us all," Chris said, sounding out of breath. And that was when I noticed my current condition. Since I couldn't feel anything below the chest, I realized my pants were soaked with piss. The others noticed, and I could see them turning away from the putrid smell. They lifted me up and walked out of the space, the warm sun beaming onto my cold face. My vision started to fade now, realizing I'd never slept for 2 days. I slowly closed my eyes and faded into sleep. I woke up on the couch in an old abandoned cabin. It was obvious it was neglected. The paint was peeling, weeds were growing out of the cracks in the floorboards, and several mice scurried across the floor into a large hole. I grabbed the arm on the couch and pulled my body up, still paralyzed from the chest down. I saw Chris walk into the room with a bottle of water in hand. "Good, you're finally awake," he said, sitting down next to me on the couch. We changed your pants while you were sleeping. I do have some news now, though," Chris added. His expression was grim. "What?" I asked. We found Zachary. He's, was alive the last time I saw him." "What?" I was surprised by my own volume. "He's in the other room, but he's in very bad shape. He ain't gonna make it much longer," Jack said, looking down at the rotting floorboards. He lifted me up and carried me into the next room to see him, and I damn near screamed at the sight of him. His jaw was loosely hanging off of his face by a few strands of muscle and tendons. One eye was completely missing, while the other was hanging from the socket, and deep red cuts were all along his body, and his entire left arm and right hand, they were missing, and his legs were missing below the kneecaps, and his throat was slit. Carlton and Jack walked into the room with a revolver in hand. "We're gonna have to, Kobe. He's in too much pain." Zachary whimpered loudly as Chris aimed the revolver at his head and fired. He wasn't in pain anymore. I went into the woods on a search and rescue mission, and what I found was not human. Part 4. Let's get straight into that. The fact that we had to kill one of our valued teammates was hard on our mental health. Carlton sat on the old couch and with his face buried in his hands. Chris was sitting on the floor next to me, and I was laid against the wall, hoping that we could find something from Jack's grandfather's journal, but it was only a chance now. "I'm back," Jack said, walking through the front door. "That should be locked, Carlton, you fucking idiot." "I'm sorry, okay? I forgot." You need to barricade this now. Anyway, in the meantime, I was able to get some food with a bow and some arrows I found. So, we have some food." "What kind of food is it?" Chris asked, standing up and dusting off his cargo pants. It's rabbit. The good thing is it should keep us fed until rescue shows up." "What does it matter?" I said dryly. We are all going to die anyway, due to that thing before rescue would even show up to get us. Carlton had activated the beacon before we could stop him. His mind was decaying incredibly fast, and he was verbally lashing out at certain times. Jack plopped himself onto the couch next to Carlton and slouched back into the old cushions. He threw an old brown book with a strap on it onto the ground. Kobe, you read this while me and the other two work on some protection for the doors, okay? Jack asked, sounding like he was in a hurry. Yeah, of course, I replied back. I opened the book and started to read. Journal entry number 1. All of my studies on Wendigo over the years are finally starting to pay off. I found tracks, real tracks, that would not match up with any other animal in these woods. They were long and humanoid, but definitely not human. I followed them but with no results, just ending at a space underneath a waterfall, and then totally disappearing. I hope I can find a way to kill it, to stop all of these missing person cases, children being lured out of their homes and never seen again. Journal entry number 2. I was speaking to the First Nations tribe and they told me multiple stories of the Wendigo. One story in particular about it being able to shapeshift and mimic voices. Now the mimic voices I heard of, but not shapeshifting. This would open up a whole lot more questions about the Wendigo, like what if I had encountered it several times without knowing, or even what if it replaced one of my family members. Journal entry number 3. There is a way to kill it if it doesn't kill you first. Its weakness is fire. If you douse the area with something flammable, then set it ablaze. Once you set the area on fire, shoot the ever-loving hell out of it. Journal entry number 4. I crafted a single flammable bullet which I will take with me on a hunting trip I'm going on with my family. If that thing comes after us, the bullet won't kill it, but it would delay it long enough for at least Jack to escape. If someone is reading this, I'm sorry for the circumstances of why you might be reading this. I tried my best to try and guide myself through these procedures, but I never thought about the others who might read this. Another way you could delay it is to shoot it with a silver bullet, kind of like a werewolf. I could buy you at least a few minutes. Journal entry number 5. I made an important discovery. There is more than one Wendigo. There are a total of 3 Wendigo. I was able to do some research and found out what each of them were called. The King, a very powerful Wendigo and the largest of its kind. The classic Wendigo looks as expected when you think of a Wendigo. And the Stalker, a very fast and dangerous Wendigo. It has a very dense exoskeleton, but the fire should still do the trick with it. It also has a very acidic saliva that could burn through iron in a matter of seconds. And if you are reading this, it means I'm dead. But I wish you the best of luck. And Jack, if you are reading this, I love you. Don't ever forget that. I closed the book immediately and yelled for Chris. Get as much flammable shit you can possibly get now. He nodded and headed down into the basement. Jack walked into the room with a bottle of bourbon. Here, I found this in the bedroom. Should help with the pain for a little while, he said. No, douse the whole area with the flammable shit you can find, I said, and he nodded. There was a can of oil that could be useful, he replied. Carlton found some old rags and littered them around the cabin. Chris found a can of gasoline in the basement and was pouring trails around the apartment. I was loading up the revolver, and Jack found another bottle of whiskey, dousing the porch with it. Jack started laughing and turned to me, revealing a double-barrel shotgun. This should keep him in the flames, he said, loading up 2 slugs into the barrels. Carlton walked into the room with a frightened look upon his face. You need to see this, he said, his voice full of anxiety. We all looked out the window and saw a massive exodus of wildlife. Wolves were running, bears were running, and the skies were covered in birds. Oh, this was new. This never happened before. And then we saw it. No, we saw them. The three of them. The one that killed most of us, and the second one, which was taller, with massive antlers, and this one was white. The third one was on all fours, and it was jet black, with a human skull-like head. This one was on all fours and had 6 large spikes shooting out of its back. Its mouth was agape, revealing an orange glowing saliva-like substance. Its eyes also glowed the brightest of them. Another difference was that it had an exoskeleton-type armor to its appearance. Then the black one started to walk on all fours up to the porch. Jack gripped a Molotov to his chest, muttering a prayer. Carlton closed his eyes, suppressing his tears, and Chris grabbed me and hid me behind the couch. The barricade would hold for a few minutes. It would give us more time to coordinate, at least. I heard the unmistakable sound of splintering wood at the door. The barricade started to come loose as the pounding increased. It tried smashing the window, but the metal bars kept it secured. I thank God for that. Then the barricade soon fell apart, all items sprawling across the room as the door smashed open. And right then we had to accept we had to do this. We had to face them. I went into the woods on a search and rescue mission. What I encountered was not human. The finale. Let's get straight into that. I hid behind the couch and started to pray that Jack's grandfather was not wrong. Too many people were already dead now. I looked at the step to see the figures in the tree line approaching. We heard footsteps outside the front door and back door. Chris ran to the back door, putting his full weight against the door with a thud. Carlton grabbed the Molotov and hid behind the small kitchen island, peeking his head out and occasionally to make sure that everyone was in position. Jack waited next to the front door with the other Molotov. The thuds were getting louder, and they were now at the door. I took a deep breath and slid behind the couch. There was a loud bang at the back door, and then the front door, and then the back door again. Chris was struggling to keep it closed when all of a sudden Chris flew across the room into the wall, destroying it and then falling to the ground, clutching his side. The back door was wide open, and a black Wendigo walked into the house, looking straight at Chris, who promptly flipped it off. The Wendigo charged at him, and Jack busted out of his hiding spot, throwing the Molotov right at the Wendigo's face. I screeched in pain as the front door flew open. The fire began spreading rapidly across the floor, and the other 2 Wendigos were backing away from the door. Carlton then ran outside after the other 2 with the second Molotov in his hand, and Chris came and grabbed me as we walked out past the now dead Wendigo. He threw me onto the ground outside and collapsed beside me, and Carlton ran back to us with a revolver in his hand. "Did you get them?" I asked him, and he stared back at me coldly before shooting Chris in the head and then aimed a gun at me. He started grimacing as he struggled to drop the gun. "What have you done?" I yelled at him through my sobs. "What has to be done?" He aimed the gun at me again and pulled the hammer down. Jack rushed out of the cabin, tackling Carlton to the ground, and Carlton threw Jack into a tree. I grabbed the revolver that was laying on the ground and shot Carlton in the head 6 times. He turned back to me and smiled cruelly, his eyes now glowing bright yellow. Slowly he walked up to me, his jaw dislocating like a python. His hair then began falling off of his head. He crouched down beside me and put his hand on my chest, his fingernails growing incredibly long. Jack jumped onto his back, driving his hunting knife into his eye, and the creature There was now Carlton howled in pain, as it no longer resembled Carlton anymore. It resembled a humanoid hybrid-looking thing. It shed its disguise fully after Jack stabbed it in the neck, and it was the King Wendigo. A bruised and scratched Carlton emerged from the bushes, throwing a Molotov at the wounded Wendigo, when it screeched in pain as its skin melted off of its bones. It looked at me and charged towards me again, but this time another Wendigo emerged from the bushes, tackling the King. I only now realized this was a battle for dominance. After seeing its leader wounded, it would try to kill it to become the Alpha. The Wendigo grabbed the flaming King by the antlers and smashed it into a tree. The King grabbed the smaller Wendigo by the fist and broke the smaller one's arm. The smaller one tried to retreat, but it was too late, and the King grabbed it and tore its broken arm completely off. I never thought I would be rooting for the smaller one, but I secretly was, because I wanted to kill that one myself. The smaller one rammed the King into the burning cabin, but the King grabbed the other one by the jaw and shoved its face into the flames. The smaller one kicked the King in the stomach and ran behind the weak King and kicked it into the flames further. It grabbed a long wooden stake from the burning wreckage and rammed it into the King's chest, knocking them both to the ground. The smaller one was crawling out of the fire while the King was towering over it. It stomped onto the smaller one's head, splattering a black and green liquid everywhere. Well, shit, I thought. Now we have to deal with the King by ourselves. Now the King was limping out of the flames with no skin at all. It was truly a horrifying sight, seeing its quivering organs. I lifted the revolver and shot the last bullets I had into the King's exposed heart. The heart leaked black fluid as the King clutched its chest. It looked at me with its one good eye as it limped towards Jack, who was frozen with fear. Carlton rushed out and drove the knife into the King's kneecap, taking its leg completely off, and it hopped around on its good leg as it kept trying to shapeshift into different animals to escape us, but it couldn't because of its injuries. Jack pushed the King onto the ground and drove the knife into his good eye, completely blinding it. It screeched in pain as it tried to grab us, and Carlton drove a sharp piece of wood into its neck as it made a small, whimpering noise. It vomited black fluid all over the ground.
Wait!
It screamed in an unhuman voice.
I only try to survive.
It managed to get those words out while it vomited black fluid in between. Carlton grabbed an old hatchet off of the ground, and Carlton hacked its head off. Survived that, cocksucker, Jack yelled at the decapitated creature. Soon we heard the sounds of a helicopter off in the distance. Jack grabbed the King's head and threw it into the flames. I only noticed that Chris's body was stomped on during the Wendigo fight earlier. His head splattered just like that of the smaller Wendigo. Things went better from here. The rescue team found the body of the Wendigo and called a group of paranormal investigators who told them to keep it from the public. And so instead we lied and said a pack of wolves attacked us. But we knew the truth, and honestly, that was all that mattered for now. We gave everyone who died a funeral. The doctors were able to fix my spine where that thing had slashed me. I can't run yet, but I'm working on that. We all quit the search and rescue jobs afterwards. I could never forget that creature that attacked us. I could never forget my friends who were killed, knowing nothing but the fact that what killed them enjoyed doing it. I will never go into the woods again, but I do not think that that would stop it. I hope that you can learn from these posts to defend yourself against a Wendigo, if you come across one. If you do, I will pray for you. Good night and goodbye. Wow, 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 wow. Certainly another one. Wow. Short but epically chilling mini-series there from the incredible mind of REEzilla2005 over on Reddit No Sleep. Big thank you, Ree, for giving me the heads up to your second series. I'm looking forward to getting stuck into that one as soon as possible. Guys and girls, as ever, you know the drill. Please do let me know what you thought down below in the comments box. Please do like and share. It really does help with the channel and our community further. And why not hashtag TeamFEAR and DMT's Cryptid Crew. If you're an aspiring writer or would just like to have a crack at things like myself, please do get in touch with me at the usual email as on screen, which is dmtforestofear@gmail.com. I really look forward to hearing from you. I hope everybody's had a lovely, relaxing weekend and trying to keep fit and focused during these testing times. But above all, guys, remember, be safe, not sorry.